Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. If you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And everybody is welcome here because one of my mission statements is it takes all kinds to make the world. And as we're heading into delving into this word, forgiveness, for a second time, and again, if you've never met me before, we have been picking randomly powerful words, a powerful word on Monday each week. And we've been delving into it lightly in some points, more heavily in other ways. And it is based on my own experience, right? Because this is my life. This is my journey. This is the work that I'm doing for myself in the anticipation, in the expectation and the belief, right? Because I couldn't expect something unless I really, truly believed in something. And this work that I'm doing on myself is to better understand what happened so that we don't, as a whole, right? Sometimes there is collateral damage in our life stories, in those movements that we make. But we can choose to ignore it, bypass it, build up some walls and surround ourselves with all those tools to keep us safe, to keep that away from us. Or we can look at it, we can work with it, play with it, and see if we can do a little bit better by it, a little bit better by ourselves, and possibly a little bit better in others. We got this word forgiveness this week. It's the second time we've gotten this word forgiveness to work with. I get it. I basically stayed within that story because it is a story. It's a good story. It is a true story. But I think that story is a lot deeper than how I expressed it, or maybe deeper than in that moment of that lesson, in that experience, than it truly, really was. I think forgiveness is a lot more important than, right, that little lesson that when we picked up that word and I delved into it. You guys, if you've been with me for any length of time, when we started this 54 words, we're picking 54 words, and then Cindy's going to put a deck together out of those 54 words. But in the serendipities, in the breadcrumbing, in those little clues and gifts along the way, right? Like getting this word forgiveness twice, right? And I could have just brushed it off, or I could have said, okay, well, today we're just going to rehash the word forgiveness. But in my heart, I know, and in my life, I know, and in my future movement, because I truly believe that we move in life and in the next life. And these are my beliefs. It takes all kinds to make the world. And if you give me that credit in that moment to maybe take in something in a different perspective, maybe you may get where I'm coming from. I believe that we move lifetime after lifetime with some of these same characters, maybe not all the characters, depending in this group that we're moving within. This group could be very, very small. It could be 10 or 20 different souls, but maybe, right? Maybe you belong to Jesus's group and you got hundreds of millions of people moving within that group, right? But sometimes We are enticed in the moment to come into a group because we're sitting in that pain. And the member of our group is not willing to give us those lessons, right? In our evolution, we pick up so many different characters and so many different souls along the way, right? Souls that are taking in lessons, souls that have not even recognizing that there are lessons and opportunities to make movement. Like we have an opportunity in this moment of getting this word forgiveness for a second time. And who knows, before we finish these 54 words, we might pick up this word forgiveness. And it's curious because remember what I said, for those of you have been with me for any length of time, you know we got this word forgiveness, right? And you know how excited I was to get this word forgiveness, just to tell that one story of my mother on her deathbed and that moment that we had to make a little bit of movement. But in truth, it was only a little bit of movement for that moment where we're going to meet again. This is the stinker part of it. I don't want to meet that energy again, right? I don't want to be in a relationship with characters who are not moving the way that I'm moving. And that might seem selfish, but it's the way I feel, because these are the gifts that these characters have brought into my life. And when they brought those gifts into my life, right, here I am sitting in a lesson again of forgiveness. How many times do we have to forgive before we get it right? How many times do we have to put up with the same story, the same lessons over and over and over again, in that reminder of what we're not getting right? I don't want to come into my next life with some of these characters. I don't. But because of the way that I believe, because of the lessons that have come across my path that I resonated with, I can't pick the good part of that truth and just toss to the side that bad part of that truth just because I don't want to accept that part. Because I recognize that it's truth, right? We're going to come in to the next lifetime with some of those terrible lessons, some of those terrible beliefs, some of those heartbreaking perspectives, some of those characters who have not taken in the lessons that possibly, right, might never take in those lessons. But I'm not the person that gets to choose who I come into this world with, right? And though we would like to think that we do, it's mixed in with another character, another being that is trying to have an existence in their own movement. And the best that we can do is mesh that together to come up with something agreeable in that movement and in this existence that I'm in right now. All I can do is come to the table the best that I can with the lessons that I have in my pocket in that moment, right? With the anticipation, the hopefulness, and the expectation that in the next moment, I might have realized, I might have experienced a new lesson. So here we go. We're going to delve into this word forgiveness for a second time, right? I was excited the first time to get this word forgiveness, but it coming across my path again, I recognize I didn't get something right? That possibly we might come in to the next life or the next day or the next year with some of these same characters. They might look a little bit different, they might act a little bit different, but they're offering up the same lessons, right? So do we make that choice to delve in a second time or a third time or a fourth time? Or we choose to put the blinders on, right? Put that on the shelf. Put up with it. Put up with it, right? Save it for another day. That could be somebody else's problem, not my problem. Came across my path yesterday. It's now my problem, right? And it will continue to be my problem until it comes into my life and say, oh, I've got this. I've got this. And not only have I got this, I'm going to make sure that somebody else has got this, right? Because it's what comes across our paths in the moment. And if this has come across your path in the moment, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, if you have, it makes sense that it's coming across your path again because, right, you're making a little bit of movement vicariously through somebody else's movement. And I hope there's a lesson in it for you, a little bit of movement for you. Maybe no movement for you because, right, in this moment you're getting a lesson and you don't need to take it again. Or maybe you've already gotten this lesson and this is a lesson that's wholly mine. I don't get it. There's lots of things in this world that I don't get. A lot of baby spoons being offered to me, right? And some of it I'm taking in and go, oh, right? Banana mash, yum, right? And then the next one is beef and bean or carrots, and you go, right? It's not that we don't need the beef and carrots. We most certainly do need the beef and carrots. But in this lifetime, right, in the lessons and in the experiences that I have had, I have detached or attached a flavor to that. And I may or may not like it. And that's right, that's okay, right? Tomorrow I might try it again. There was a time I couldn't force carrots into me. I just couldn't. But now I'm digesting them. Now I'm not only digesting them, I'm enjoying them, right? And more important than that, I'm appreciating them because my body won't run proper without the nutrients of the carrots, right? So somehow that lesson came to me, right? And it was a painful lesson. It was a lesson. Well, how can carrots be a painful lesson? Okay, well, let's tell you that lesson. When I was a child, very young, I probably maybe 5, maybe 6 years old, didn't like carrots. Didn't like carrots. And we were not allowed to leave the table unless our plates were empty. Right? My plate was empty except for the carrots, and I wasn't allowed to leave the table. My mother had to do the dishes. She took my carrots and she put them in a bowl. She put them in front of me, and I wasn't allowed to leave the table until the carrots were done. I couldn't bring myself to eat the carrots. I tried the very best that I could. And I got carrots down into me somehow, right? But then I puked up those carrots into that bowl, knowing that if I puked on my mother's table or the floor that had just been washed, it was going to be more painful. Not recognizing that having to eat that bowl of carrots with my throw up in it was meant to be a lesson for me. My disdain from carrots come from that experience. It was a long time before I ate carrots again. It might have even had to have been carrot cake before I gave carrots another shot. But carrots got another shot. And it's in the repetitiveness of the lessons over and over and over again that I got to recognize how important carrots are for my own well being, right? Eating those carrots, I'm reminded of that experience. But also now there's a new experience attached to the carrots. I eat those carrots and I go, I'm giving myself what I need. I'm eating these despite the experience that I had with them as a small child. These carrots are delicious, and carrots are delicious. They are a vegetable, and it was the idea that it was a vegetable that made it impossible for me to get it down, that infuriated my mother that I wouldn't get it down, that I puked into my bowl and was made to take in a lesson, a painful lesson, but a lesson that in the end it served me, right? Just like this word that we got yesterday for the second time, forgiveness. Can I forgive my mother in that? Yes, I can forgive my mother in forcing me to eat my carrots, in recognizing that there was some child who was starving in Africa that would have done anything for that bowl of carrots, right? It was in that lesson. It was a painful lesson. It was a lesson that needed me to forgive how it was presented to me, right? It wasn't given to me out of hatefulness, out of despite, because I feel intent, right? I feel intent. I look for the intent, right? I am an expert in seeing the intent. It's how I got here. That despite that somebody's intent that they might be able to offer up a good lesson, right? And to take the lesson by my own choice, right? And for me to decide whether that lesson was delicious or whether it was something I was going to toss to a side and never look at again. But that lesson, if it comes across my path, I don't have a choice, especially now when I understand that I'm supposed to play with the lessons that come across my path. We've had this word forgiveness many, many, many times, right? In fact, forgiveness was one of my very first words in searching for my one word. I have had so many one words, and if you don't understand the concept of your one word, a book by Evan Carmichael, My One Word, right? Growing up was this word despite. Despite you're not going to conclude me. Despite the answer is no, right? Despite what you think of me. That was my word growing up. But was it my one word? It's not a very positive one word, right? And this is to help teach you, right? To find your one word. My second one word. I have more one words than I change my underwear in a week. And that's the truth. Pretty close to it anyway, right? But it is a process. And it doesn't have to be a difficult process, but it's all dependent on the lessons and the experiences in our life, right? My second word was forgiveness. It was the most important word in my life because it was the most impactful word in my life up until that point. At in my 50s, 57 years old, my mother passing away, and finally not maybe getting some understanding in the way that I would have liked to have understood, but getting a lesson and an understanding nonetheless, and being able to make some movement in my life by accepting this word, forgiveness, as my one word. It wasn't my one word. It was my word in that moment, and maybe it is my one word because we're in it again, and I am still in the process. I believe I found my one word, right? But I leave things open always things are left open for the possibility that I might have gotten it wrong, right? I am, what is it? A sucker for a good lesson. Let's just put it that way, right? And when I laugh at myself like that, it's because these lessons are difficult sometimes. That these lessons are not fun sometimes. But these lessons are very, very beneficial, and they're never ending by our choice, right? I could be doing something else right this moment, a lot more fun, but would it help me in the end? Could be for the moment. Get some fresh air, right? Clean up the house, get ahead of the game. Or maybe I can tidy something up. Maybe I can clean something up. Not just for this moment, not just for today, not just for the problem that I'm dealing with in the moment, but maybe I can clean it up for my entire life. Get that out of the road, that I never have to deal with it again, so that it doesn't have to be my one word. Oh, now isn't that a revelation, right? Because we've moved to other one words since then. If you're looking to find purpose, if you're looking to find where that work is needed, desperately needed, not just for yourself, but in the lessons that you can pass on to make this world a better place, to make your movement more comfortable, easier to understand, right? Have those lessons completed so that you can have enough space to absorb a different lesson. This is the book for you. No question. This is somewheres where you can start, because this is where I started. This is where I started. And this is where I am right now. And who's to say? And this is a lesson from the same person, right? Evan Carmichael, right? These lessons are so beneficial to each of us. So I'm going to put that effort in today. That's why I came in very, very early today, so that I can be in contemplation with myself without having the ties of, I've got to get this done. I've got to get this done. I'm going to piddle around. I'm going to make some movement forward, right? I'm going to take care of the few conversation affairs that I need to do, right? So that I can be with myself and truly delve into this word forgiveness, because it came across my path for a reason, not for this just moment, not for this conversation that we're having, but for the whole week. We are on day number 2. We're going to give it 3 more days and see if I can do a little bit better job at it, right? Forgiveness. I was excited the first time. I'm a little bit weary. Weary's not the word. I haven't gotten to the weary point yet. I've gotten to the curious why it's come across my path again. What are the lessons I've missed the first time around? How can I make some movement? And how can I recognize why? Why did it come across my path again? It's something that I'm missing, something huge, right? Because these 54 words, right? You can look at them for 54 years. Each word is worthy of a year's worth of lessons, right? But I came into this game late. We're going to do it in a year or just over, depending how many more times, how many words are we going to take in a second or a third time before we complete, right? This task of 54 words that have been truly impactful. It was unexpected. It wasn't how I thought it was going to work out, but it's working out. It's definitely working out. And yeah. So we're going to end this live right now. For those of you who pop in later, put your feet up, take it in, right? We do, right? And actually, I wrote it. I wrote it down here exactly what I do. It's known by many, many different names. Some of you know what it is because you know these conversations. I try to keep them light in the conversation. I try to keep it in layman's so that it's absorbable by everybody and anybody, right? But it is self-improvement. It's self-healing. It's self-help. It's self-love. It's trauma work. It's empath work. It's shadow work. It's psychology. It's philosophy, isn't it? It's nurture versus nature. It's self-parenting. We're putting in the work, right? Forgiveness. And before I leave, I'm going to tie this into forgiveness because it came across my mind in this moment, and if I don't jot it down, it will be gone. Forgiveness is the stumps. It's the failures. Sometimes it's our failure, sometimes it's in the failure of others who toss the obstacles, who purposely trip us up, who through their own, and there are lessons, right? I'm calling on Wayne Dyer for this one, right? In this idea of resentment and jealousy of what we don't understand, what we don't have, what other people have that we want, that we desire, but is not meant for us. It was meant for something else. It was meant for someone else. We can't help sometimes what we're attached to, right? That's a good sign, right? When more than one community is attached, is drawn to that one thing, because it says that one thing is pertinent, is important, is of value, and yet we trip them up. We throw in the obstacles. We encourage them to fail. We encourage them to fail not for their benefit, but for our benefit. And because it came into my mind just as I was coming off, and we're attaching it to forgiveness, I guess that's what I'm contemplating on today, right? The other characters in our lives that hold us back from truly becoming what we were meant to be, right? What we would like to be. And the characters who are supposed to be in our lives. And those characters who came into our lives, but only for a moment, or were only meant to be there for a moment. And yet, because we saw something, we hold on to that for dear life, believing that that's what we're deserving of. That belongs to us. If I can't have it, nobody can. We're going to attach that to forgiveness. I'm going to be contemplating staying in that today, and I will be back in to take my own lesson to make sure I compound that idea, because I am confident that's the road that I need to be going into. And if I don't write it down in this moment, it's going to be gone, and that's a guarantee. Lessons come and lessons go, but what we grab onto in that moment of opportunity, well, that's in our choices. And that's a topic for another day, you guys. Okay, it's going to be a day of Cindy with Cindy. And, not meaning to trigger, but at the same time, meaning to trigger because, right, we want the comfy, we want the couch, we want the remote control. We don't want to look at the bills. right? We don't want to look at the bills, but we know if we don't look at these things, they become the obstacles. They become the things that trip us up, right? And in the end, you're going to have to pay the man anyway, right? I'd much rather pay the man and move on to the next lesson, right? Than having that bill collector knocking at the door every few minutes. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.